The Department of Public Health and Human Services is pleased to bring you Aging Horizons. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, fraud, legal issues, veterans benefits, and caregiving. Aging Horizons is a program dedicated to inform and prepare Montanans on these timely issues, making a difference to you and your loved ones. Here now is today's program host.
Today on Aging Horizons, we're going to be covering something that's on the forefront of all of our minds, estate planning. We're going to be going over why you might want to start your estate planning early, what documents you might want to consider doing, and why right now is an especially good time to get your estate planning documents done. We're going to be talking with Susan Gobb, so make sure you stay tuned to Aging Horizons.
With as many as 1 in 10 Americans at risk for Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia, chances are someone you know and love will receive that diagnosis. When that happens, you may well feel devastated. But know that you are not alone. Help is available. You don't have to face dementia by yourself. Call the free 24/7 Alzheimer's Association helpline, 800-272-3900, for guidance and support.
It's been 27 years. I never thought I'd still be smoking, but here I am, COPD and all. I'm about to have a granddaughter. There's so much to show her, but I'm scared I won't be able to keep up like I used to. I kind of gave up on myself on quitting. But it's different now. I want to be here for her and for my daughter.
When I stopped showing up, Jim showed up at my door. He took me to the hospital in town to get me help. That's the day Jim saved my life.
Everyone has a role to play in preventing suicide. Know the signs and don't be afraid to speak up. If someone you know is in crisis or emotional distress, the only wrong thing to say is nothing at all. Call 800-273-TALK or text MT to 741-741.
Every generation produces heroes, men and women who step forward to defend our country in time of need, no matter the personal cost to themselves. And though we can never fully repay them, we can make sure they have access to low-cost, long-term care when they need it. That's what Montana's Veterans Homes are all about. If you've got a hero in need in your family, call us. We can help.
Welcome to Aging Horizons, brought to you by the Department of Public Health and Human Services. I'm your host, Katie Lovell, and today we're speaking with Susan Gobb, who's a contract attorney with the Department of Public Health and Human Services, and we're going to be discussing all about estate planning. So, Susan, thank you very much for being with us today.
You're welcome.
And I think estate planning is one of those things that we all kind of put to the back burner, but right now is a period in history where people are thinking about it, talking about it, considering doing it a little bit more.
Right.
So when we say estate planning, what does that even mean?
Okay, I think for a lot of people, when you think estate planning, they think about their will. And while a will is an important document, in my mind it is not the most important document. So what we're talking about is planning for when you perhaps may not be able to make decisions on your own. So that means a durable power of attorney for healthcare, a durable power of attorney for financial issues, a living will or a living will appointment. We do things in terms of deeds. There are ways to pass your property down without passing it through your will. And just basically the overall picture of what happens should you not be able to make appropriate decisions.
And when someone is going to start thinking about estate planning services, what are some of the things that they need to consider about their own situation before they move forward?
I think you need to sort of do an inventory. What is it that you own? Who is it that you want it to go to? If you weren't able to make your own decisions, are you comfortable with your spouse making those decisions? Are you comfortable with your children making those decisions? Maybe there's one child that you're more comfortable making healthcare decisions and one child who may be better with the financial aspects of your life. But basically it's conversations with your family, making sure that you trust the people that you're going to give authority to make decisions if you cannot.
And a lot of that can be really done well before you reach out to any type of legal assistance, right? We can start having those conversations early.
And I think you should, because so often when people come in and we're working with them and they want to appoint somebody as their agent under their durable powers of attorney, we ask, have you talked to this person? And they say no. And I think it's always good to have those conversations, because you may have a child that you want to appoint who may not want to be appointed.
Sure.
Or a family friend, or your spouse may not be comfortable making decisions about your final illness. And those are all very, very important things to talk about, as well as what you want to have happen should you not be able to make decisions, particularly in the healthcare arena.
And I think a lot of people have maybe done some of those conversations, or maybe even a document or two. But are there points in your life when maybe you should consider taking another look at your estate planning?
I think it's always important every time you have a major milestone. Now, my philosophy is that everyone 18 years of age and older should have a durable power of attorney for healthcare and for financial.
Sure.
We don't think about becoming incapacitated when we're young, but there are car accidents and serious illnesses that will pop up, and it's nice to have that information set aside. I think it's important to review your documents when your spouse dies.
Sure.
If you have a child that dies before you and you've appointed them to be your agent, any kind of major life changes, I think it's always very good to do this.
And health changes too. So many times we see, a spouse who gets diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia. That's a great time to relook at your documents.
Right, and it's always very interesting because we're so used to, I think, depending on our spouses, and when it becomes apparent that those roles have shifted, it is sometimes really difficult for couples to realize that they need to perhaps take the other one of the members out of the chain of people who make decisions.
And I think a lot of people put off these conversations because they can feel like they're going to be really stressful or really overwhelming. What are some tips that we give folks that can have these conversations go a little easier?
I think it's always important to particularly warn your children, I'm not dying tomorrow. We're just doing some pre-planning. Try to, in some ways, take the emotion out of it. Try to just sort of say, look, this is where we are, this is what's going on. Particularly if you're talking to your children. Your dad and I have discussed this. This is kind of where we are in the picture. I think it's very important to not have conversations with maybe just one child. The other children need to be clued in. Because again, if you choose one child to be your agent or to be the personal representative when you die, it's important that your other kids understand why you chose that person.
Sure.
And so we talk about, just getting an inventory done. What do I have? What do I want to happen to the things? What am I particularly concerned about in terms of health care?
Sure.
Do I want a do not resuscitate order? Do I want certain things done if I become seriously ill? Do I want the doctors to make the decisions, or do I want a member of my family to work with the doctor to make my health care decisions? And 90% of the seniors we work with think that they will keep their physical and mental acuity until the day they die.
Sure.
And that is rarely the case.
Yeah.
And that is a really hard thing. In Montana, we're fiercely independent. Nobody wants to hand over the reins. And that's good, but I will tell you, if you don't do it, you can have a situation like what is happening in my family right now, where we have a senior who chose not to do any particular planning, and it is a nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely. When we get back, I want to talk a little bit about what some of those documents are, how we go about doing that pre-planning. So make sure you stay tuned, because we're going to go over those documents next.
I think the most pleasant surprise when we turned 65 and signed up for Medicare Part B was finding out about our Welcome to Medicare preventive visit.
It was free, and it gave us the opportunity to visit with our doctors and establish a plan for our health going forward.
They reviewed our medical history, measured our height, weight, blood pressure, and counseled us on other risk factors.
To learn more about Medicare's free or low-cost preventive and wellness benefits, call your local SHIP counselor at 800-551-3191. I mentioned it's free, right?
Twice.
In 20 years at an electric utility, I've seen the hardships many of our neighbors face with high winter heating bills.
Ross Holter, Flathead Electric Co-op.
That's why I donate to Energy Share of Montana. I just hate the thought of senior citizens and young kids especially being cold in the winter. Donate to Energy Share. Help your neighbor stay warm.
To donate, call 888-779-7589 or go to EnergyShareMT.com. Energy Share, you can help your neighbor stay warm.
This is Sergeant Jones. Please respond. I was separated from my squad. Requesting backup. Anyone? Please respond. I'm all alone here.
This is Bill. He just received his new Medicare card and is following some simple rules to protect himself from fraud. He knows to never give out his Medicare, Social Security, or bank number over the phone. And this is Nancy. She knows that to detect any problems, she always reads her Medicare summary notice or Medicare Advantage EOB to make sure the billing is correct. Both Bill and Nancy know that anything suspicious can be reported to Montana SMP at 1-800-551-3191.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. Today we're speaking with Susan Gobbs, who's a contracted attorney with the Department of Public Health and Human Services, and we're talking all about those important estate planning questions. So Susan, when we talk about this pre-planning, there are a ton of documents that we can do ahead of time. Let's start with one that I think people think about just traditionally, the will. What is a will? What goes into it? How do we do it?
Okay. A will just simply expresses your wishes as to what you want to happen after you have died. So it will have provisions like, I want my last illness to be paid for. I want my bills to be paid for. It talks about how you want your things distributed. And in a will, you don't put down Great Aunt Sadie's gravy ladle. We have another document for that. But you basically set forth how you want your estate distributed. The wills that we do are very simple in our program. They're usually 4 or 5 pages long because that's really, for most people, not that hard of a decision, and it's not that complex.
Sure.
A lot of times people will just leave everything to their spouse, and then when the spouse dies, then their will talk about where it goes after that.
And if you have complicating situations, things like minor children, I, for example, have minor children, would my will look different than, say, your will?
Most certainly. And if I was in a second marriage with a blended family, my will would look very different. And we also talk about trust. Now, our program doesn't do trust, but trusts have an important part of estate planning, particularly if you have minor children or you have a lot of assets and you want them to be handled in a different way. So we never discourage people from going and consulting with an attorney. We think that's a lovely thing for them to do if they've got special complicating factors in their estate planning.
Another one might be an adult child with a disability.
Exactly. There are specific reasons why you might not want to leave that child part of your estate, or you might want to set up a special needs trust. So there's a lot of different moving parts, and everybody's situation is different.
Sure. So the will is only in effect after you've passed away.
Exactly.
It's a post-mortem document. I don't have to read it before anybody passes away.
Right.
Okay. So before we pass away, there are a lot of other documents that we can do. So let's talk about those powers of attorney, because I think those are super important documents. Let's start with the financial power of attorney.
Okay. A financial power of attorney is where you give the principal, which is you, give someone else who's the agent the ability to make certain financial decisions. Now, I think one thing that people really get confused about is if you have a power of attorney, it doesn't mean you can't make your own decisions. You're still in the driver's seat until such time as you can't make those decisions. And I think sometimes that agents, in an abundance of caution, will try to wrestle away the reins from the principal, because maybe they don't like the decisions the person's making, or they're just trying to take care of mom. And so that's a really important thing. But you can designate under your financial power of attorney what kind of action someone can take. You can also put special instructions in. This person has to keep books so that anybody who wants to, not a member of the public necessarily, but if Adult Protective Services or another heir or someone who has an interest can say, show me the books. How are you spending mom's money while mom is still alive?
And what type of powers are included under a financial power of attorney? Could they file a person's taxes, for example?
Yes, they can file. There are a number of boxes that you can check.
Sure.
You can check, I want this person to deal with my trust land. I want this person to deal with my bank account, deal with my broker, deal with any pension I might get, sell real estate, sell vehicles, purchase real estate, purchase vehicles. So it's pretty wide-ranging. You can narrow it if you're very, very concerned about what you want somebody to do. But the problem with that is if you narrow it too much, you tie your agent's hands. And if you can't make decisions and you haven't given them the authority to make the decisions, you'll probably end up in court.
Sure. Absolutely. And I think a lot of people have signed maybe a financial power of attorney that's pretty limited without even knowing it. It's one of the documents you sign when you buy a car a lot of times. So it's one that people may be a little bit more familiar with. But then let's switch into that financial power, or the healthcare power of attorney. Okay. How is that different?
Healthcare power of attorney, again, talks about things related to your health. It is not a statutory form, so there's a million different forms floating around out there. But it gives the person the authority, if you allow it, to do things like have access to your medical records, a specific HIPAA section. They can consult with the doctors. They can hire home health care people. They can fire doctors and home health care people. They can make determinations about whether you should have surgery or not. But again, I want to emphasize that until the principal no longer has the capacity to make these decisions, the agent shouldn't stand in their way. Sure. And how I do this, and I always do this with my hands, is if you have a power of attorney, the agent shouldn't get in front of the principal until and if the principal can't make decisions, and then they support them. So it should be a supported thing.
Sure.
The agent should support the principal, not get in their way and get in the front. And I think that's not well understood with the general public.
Absolutely.
And again, I know particularly in times of COVID, kids get real protective about their parents.
Yeah.
And even in my own family, we've had some interesting discussions about what can mom and dad do. No, Dad, you can't go shop for Christmas presents for mom.
Sure.
That sort of thing. And so it's really important to get it established that a parent doesn't lose their ability to make decisions.
Awesome. Okay, when we get back, there are a few more documents I want to talk about, a lot of those deed work documents. So make sure you stay tuned to Aging Horizons.
I was diagnosed with diabetes in 1992, and I went into denial. It made me angry. I was a professional chef, and I didn't want to change my eating style. It took me a long time to get serious about managing my health. My perspective changed from resentment to one of loving my body, the container for my spirit. Getting help from my diabetes educator supported my goals of improved self-care. I want to feel good and have a great life. My diabetes educator helps me do this.
If If you give or receive care, you already know that it can cause stress on caregiver and receiver alike. The good news is, if you have limited resources, help is available. The Montana Lifespan Respite Program may be able to help you pay for care while you take a break. Even better news is how easy it is to apply. You can get an application online or have one sent to you. We'll get back to you within 5 working days. Respite for caregivers. It's okay to need it. It's okay to want it. It's okay to get it.
I have so many questions about power of attorney.
Well, some powers of attorney are for finances and others are for healthcare decisions.
A power of attorney designates an agent who would make decisions on your behalf.
While making a power of attorney, you have the ability to control your agent's power.
You also have the ability to decide when that POA would take effect.
Wait, am I giving away all my rights?
Power of attorney isn't a license to make any decision for you, just those that you've specified.
Your agent should be somebody that's working in your best interest, but it should also be somebody that you would trust.
What if they try to abuse their power?
Protective measures like third-party accounting, secondary signatures, defined spending and gifting limits can help protect against financial exploitation. An agent's powers can always be limited by a customized power of attorney, and they can be revoked by you or the court if the power of attorney is abused.
So carefully drafted estate planning documents can help ensure that your finances are monitored, but not abused.
If you or someone you know is being exploited, please report to Aging Services Bureau at 844-277-9300 or the Legal Service Developer at 1-800-332-2272. This message sponsored by the DPHHS Aging Service Bureau.
Welcome back to Aging Horizons. Today we're speaking with Susan Gobbs and we're talking all about estate planning. So Susan, we've covered the will, the healthcare, and the financial power of attorney, and there are usually about 3 more documents that we generally consider as part of an estate planning practice. What's the living will is the next one?
The living will is the next one, and I'm going to talk about the living will and the living will appointment at the same time. A living will is designed for when and if you reach your final illness, and it is a protracted illness, you can give either under a living will your medical providers the authority to do what they think is appropriate during this time period if you cannot make a decision. A living will appointment is that you appoint someone to work with the doctors to make the appropriate decisions about your health care. There is some overlap between the living will and living will appointment and the durable power of attorney for health care. In a large part, that's because a lot of times we don't know what our last illness is. And so you don't always trigger the last illness and the living will because you may be dead before we ever figure out that's your last illness. So that's the living will appointment.
Okay. Let's talk about the Declaration of Homestead. This is a really great document that everyone should have if they own a home.
Right, and it's funny, it's not really an estate planning document, but it is a document designed to protect most people's major asset, which is their home. Under Montana law, you can file a homestead exemption on your primary residence. Now, we have learned over the years that that's not necessarily just your house. That could be a mobile home that you own that is in a trailer court or a community. It could also be a motor home. If you have sold your house and you're living on a house on wheels, like we see more people doing these days, you can file a homestead exemption. It has to be your primary residence, so you have to live in it more than 6 months a year. You can protect that asset up to $250,000. Now, I personally think we probably should raise that amount. We haven't raised it for quite a few years. But what it does is it protects your house from unsecured debt. So it doesn't protect if you don't pay your taxes or if there's a contractor's lien or there's a mortgage. But if you get in a car wreck and your insurance is inadequate to handle all the costs of that, it would protect against medical bills, any lawsuit that has nothing to do with the house, credit card debt, medical debt, any kind of debt that floats out there that's not secured by that house. You have the protection up to $250,000.
Okay. It's a great one. Really important document. Not really even something you need to do as part of your estate planning. You can do it anytime.
Again, kind of like what I say about the durable powers of attorney. When you're 18, you should have those. When you buy a house, you should put a homestead exemption on it.
Absolutely. So the last document is called a revocable transfer on death deed, which is a whole mouthful. What does that document do?
That allows your house to pass to who you want it to go to your heirs outside of probate. It is not always appropriate. There are different creditor periods. In other words, under a normal probate, there's a certain period of time, it's 120 days, that a creditor can file a claim and say, this person owes me money, you need to pay me. Under a transfer on death deed, that period is a year.
Okay.
So it is something that a lot of people like because they're scared of probate. I will tell you, probate in Montana is not that expensive and it's not that complicated. So it is a tool, but it's not for everyone.
Sure.
And that's part of what we do in our programs, try and help people determine whether or not that's in fact an effective tool. In the legislature right now, there is a bill going up. We don't know if it will pass or not that would allow transfer on death deeds for vehicles.
Okay.
So that might be helpful if you have a motorhome or a boat or cars. But again, we don't know if that'll pass. If it passes, it won't go into effect until October.
Sure.
And we'll all be spending a lot of time drafting new forms.
New forms, absolutely. Yep. So now we know all of this about all of these documents. Now, where do people get these documents?
Well, there are many different ways. What we do in our program is we assist people in their estate planning. So we have two different ways that we do this. We do this telephonically. So we have a very experienced staff member who will talk with people on the phone and walk them through after we've gotten paperwork from them. The other way is we have live clinics that we do throughout the state. We just decided yesterday where the clinics will be for 2021. We will start having clinics in April. So sort of keep tuned with your local area agency on aging. Those will be publicized. And in those cases, we have live attorneys and paralegals who will work with individuals to help them figure out their estate planning.
Absolutely. And folks can call, then we're going to put the number up on the screen, but they can call my office and get registered for either those live in-person clinics or those telephone clinics.
Right. And because of the nature of what we do, we're a pretty small group of people, so we do one clinic a month during the nice weather months. But you can always call and be set up for a telephone estate planning.
Absolutely. And even if you just have a question about the documents, you can call. Great. Well, Susan, thank you so much for joining us today. I think this is a topic that is certainly in all of our minds at this particular moment in history, and certainly isn't one that's going to go away anytime soon. It's the only fact of life. We all are going to die, so we might as well get our stuff in order ahead of time. So.
And I will tell you, just from a personal basis, I've had people who got their stuff in order and people who didn't. And it's a whole lot kinder to the people you leave behind if you get your estate planning done.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for staying tuned to today's Aging Horizons. I hope that you learned as much about estate planning as I did. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our office. The number's on the screen now. We are happy to answer questions or get you through one of those clinics. So make sure that you take a look at your estate planning documents anytime you have a major change in life. And thank you for staying tuned to Aging Horizons.
Special thanks to the Department of Public Health and Human Services for their continued support. Hosts on Aging Horizons are program specialists at the Montana Office on Aging. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions. For more information about Aging Horizons, call the Department of Public Health and Human Services toll-free at 800-332-2272.